Match on the bubble. The loser of this will be out of top 8. You see Ted, now number 32 in our overall standings. He's in first place right now. Going to pass Brad Carpenter for season 3. Jim Davis, of course, your 2015 Players Champion. Jim on 6 cards, scrying to the bottom. And the match will be underway in just a second. Going to start out. Ted, Black Cleave Cliffs. He will Inquisition of Kozilek. We'll see what Jim's working with. Conflagrate, Shriekhorn, Life from the Loam, 2 lands, and Golgari Grave Troll.
Gonna see the old Inquisition of Kozilek, your Shriekhorn. Very familiar line for modern players.
Yeah. Well, he could take... He's not going to take Life from the Loam. Yeah, he'll take Shriekhorn. It's the only card that doesn't do something in the graveyard, so I guess. But that's what you said. These discard spells, they don't do much to dredge.
No, and Jim, he may well just cast this Conflagrate for 0 because he'd rather have it in the graveyard.
Sure. Turn 1, Jim's going to go play Bloodstained Mire. Going to leave the Conflagrate in his hand. And, you know, I guess that makes sense. If Ted plays something like Dark Confidant here, he will want the burn spell.
Sure.
Ted, however, plays Tarmogoyf, currently a 2/3 artifact and sorcery in the graveyard.
Jim also wants a dual land here, so taking 3 damage to Conflagrate for 0, not a very exciting line.
Yeah. Jim will on end step, however, go get a land. His mulligan is a slow hand here. Right now, the best dredging line he has set up is turn 2 Loam, turn 3 dredge it for 3. Jund could race that.
Yeah, and hitting that Shriekhorn with the Inquisition was actually really big here. You know, Jim was relying on that to find some action pretty quickly. The Loam dredge is kind of it's a slow burn, but if he's able to find something like a Grave Troll off that first dredge, maybe Grave Troll Faithless Looting, he'll be in business pretty quickly here. Start finding those Narcomoebas, Amalgams, Bloodghasts, really get rolling.
Get stomping ground on end step.
The Tarmogoyf's going to get pretty big pretty quick. You see it's already a 3/4 artifact land sorcery.
Yeah, when you discard spell an artifact, that feels pretty free. Jim draws Bloodghast for the turn. It's the second straight turn he's drawn Bloodghast. That's not great here.
No, you'd rather be dredging over these, rather be drawing Cathartic Reunion.
Yeah, I mean, how good has that card been? It's the card from Kaladesh that a lot of players, a lot of the teams think has put it over the top. If that was Jim's top deck here, you just suddenly say, wait, oh, he's just going to win.
Yep, instead of casting the Life from the Loam, he could discard it and already be dredging it on that turn.
You know, maybe if he's lucky enough to get a Grave Troll off that, he might just have the whole deck.
Yep.
So turn 2, Life from the Loam gets back Bloodstained Mire. Jim passes. His land drop was Mana Confluence as well. It's the Silver Lining. He did shrink the Tarmogoyf with that play.
For now.
Kolaghan's Command from Ted. Oh, this is sweet. Dealing 2 damage to Jim and having himself discard a card. So Ted's discarding his own Liliana. He's just trying to pump the Tarmogoyf. So now we have instant sorcery, artifact, planeswalker. This is a really techie play, but I like it a bunch from Ted.
Yeah, this is just not a Liliana of the Veil matchup. If you plus it, Jim just has a Grave Troll. He just gets to discard it, which you don't want to have happen, and it's not a good matchup for the Edict. Jim's just playing all these Bloodghasts.
That's so cool. Okay, Jim down to 12. He untaps for turn 3. He's going to dredge the Loam. That's all he's got. The oft-used modes of Kolaghan's Command at work right there.
So he can dredge the Loam, or he could cross his fingers for a Cathartic Reunion off the top. This is the safer play.
He wasn't going to hit anyway, so that means it was the correct play.
Obviously. He did mill over Faithless Looting as well, which is great.
Yeah, draw 2, discard 2. He's got the land as well. Now, there's no dredger in the graveyard, so his draw 2 is actually just a draw 2.
Right, that is the unfortunate element here.
The plays are not particularly strong from Jim. You look at his hand. He's got Life from the Loam, 2 Bloodghasts, Conflagrate. None of those seem like they're worth casting. The Faithless Looting may be his only option.
Yeah, given that he really can't dredge too much just yet, I believe there's a Lightning Bolt in Felicetti's hand, and that Tarmogoyf's a 5/6, Jim's at 12. He just might not have anything he's able to do.
Don't ever count out Jund. It's just gonna keep on Junding.
Just keep Junding.
Thought Season to Tarmogoyf only gets so bad.
Yeah, and again, that Inquisition was just massive here. You know, if Jim had two things, if he had Shriekhorn Cathartic Reunion, it could have been a very different game. He mulliganed. He only had one piece of particularly fast action. It hit the bin before he could do anything with it.
So Jim's third land drop is the Bloodstained Mire. That's the one he got back last turn off Life from the Loam. He's going to sacrifice it. He goes to 11. He does play one. No, he actually plays no basic lands. So this. Oh, he plays a snow card. Clever, looking at the deck registration sheet. Yes, he does play a snow-covered mountain. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. Plays one basic. He's going to get that.
That's definitely a strategically relevant basic land.
Those are legal. Yeah, Cold Snap. You can play those cards. Goes to 11. He's being careful with his life points.
If your opponent free Elisa's Radiance as you,
yeah,
you're in a little bit of trouble.
See what he wants to do. He has one of his lands is Mana Confluence. Looks like he might cast Life from the Loam instead of. Interesting. He's going to get back 3 lands. I thought he would flash back the Faithless Looting, but he'll get back 3 lands.
I think he just wants to build up to Conflagrating down this Tarmogoyf.
Okay. That is a tall order. It's a 5/6, but you're right. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, he can be at 7 cards when he does it. It just has to make sure to not get the Tarmogoyf up to a 7/8. I think that
that Ted plays no other cards.
I believe that we're missing Tribal and Enchantment anyway.
Jim does the thing where he takes all the lands out of the graveyard again, so Tarmogoyf back down to a 4/5.
Also good.
Jim's deciding if he wants to Conflagrate for 0 here. He'd go to 10 to do it.
I guess Ted has a Seal of Fire in his deck, but no Tarfire.
Jim then passes. Thoughtseize, Lightning Bolt in Ted's hand. And Huntmaster of the Fells is the last card. Can he get Jim down from 11? Bolt puts Jim to 8. No, not really. I think we're looking at a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, he really wishes that Thoughtseize was an untapped land. Casting Huntmaster here would be a lot better.
So he's got to think, does he even want to Thoughtseize?
Well, you would check the math on Conflagrate versus Tarmogoyf and whether or not Thoughtseize can get enough cards out of Jim's hand. Given that Life from the Loam had 3 lands to find, that math just isn't going to work in his favor.
Tarmogoyf will attack. Jim goes down to 7. Yeah, Ted would have loved a fetch land draw there for his Huntmaster. That probably would have won the game. He still is in a pretty good spot here. 1 Lightning Bolt Jim at 6. Or 7.
With Jim playing to this Conflagrate, I'm not convinced at Ted's spot, actually.
Yeah, he'll have to draw the land for that Huntmaster. And he's not, don't be fooled, he does not have that long to do it. And Jim, his dredge for the turn, gets 2 Narcomoebas into play. Puts Loam back in his hand. That's a big draw for Tim, or a big dredge, rather. Looks like that's a lot of chump blockers.
Yep. In his hand, he has those Bloodghasts. He has enough juice. I believe he can Conflagrate, leave a land in his hand, and kill the Tarmogoyf and get the Bloodghast onto the battlefield this turn.
Well, there's a catch here. Tarmogoyf went to 5/6 off that creature. So now Jim, he'd have to discard all 7 now to the Conflagrate.
Oh, right. I suppose the Conflagrate is currently in his hand, so he has to get it out of there first.
Yeah, 1 red for Conflagrate. He's down to 7 cards in hand. He'll go down to 6.
So this should be just enough to do that, right?
Yeah, he has to discard all 7 because he's adding land to the graveyard here.
Ah.
Oh, is he? I hope he remembers this. Creature, sorcery, artifact, instant, planeswalker. If he adds land to the graveyard and only burns his Tarmogoyf for 6, that is not going to work. Yeah, planeswalker, instant sorcery, creature, artifact. It is a 5/6. And they're confirming, yep, 5/6 Tarmogoyf. If Jim adds land to the graveyard, which he's about to do, he should play like this is a 6/7 Tarmogoyf.
All right, so that will certainly slow down the Bloodghast plan.
Yeah, he has to discard all of them.
But there's no way that's not the play. You can think about spending some time just blocking with Narcomoeba, but Maelstrom Pulse will kill you from here.
Jim down to 6. He has to use Mana Confluence. Good catch by Jim. He looked like he was only going to burn it for 6, and now he says, wait, I have to do this for 7. Discards his whole hand.
I saw, Ted kind of reached for the Tarmogoyf die.
Yeah.
Maybe he telegraphed what was going to happen.
So Ted shoots Jim down to 3 with a lightning bolt, then draws for turn. It's Dark Confidant. One more bolt should seal it up. Ted has fewer turns, not too many turns to get it though. Now Jim untaps. He's got 3 life points, 2 Narcomoebas in play, no hand. But look at all this action. He's got now choosing between Dredging Loam and Grave Troll. He also has a Faithless Looting in the yard.
Loam has some guaranteed value because of the Blood Gas, but Grave Troll could pay larger dividends.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in the graveyard. He dredges the Grave Troll.
Flipping over Conflagrate's pretty big there. You can just discard the Grave Troll and kill the Dark Confidant.
He still has Faithless Loot. Yeah, he milled Prized Amalgam and the Conflagrate. He could kill Dark Confidant. That's not bad at all. Ideally, he'd like to get a land in his hand at some point. So he's got that Faithless Looting, which he could use as well.
If you wanted to do that this turn, you would have to take a point off of the Mana Confluence to go down to 2.
Yeah.
With just Narcomoebas to block a Dark Confidant.
Well, okay, wait. Most of the cards that kill... That's fine, right? He just leaves the Narcomoebas up. A lot of the cards that kill 2 blockers probably kill Jim also.
Yeah, there's not a ton of Maelstrom Pulses in any deck list, just 1 in Felicetti's list. Yeah. But
Jim,
the Dark Confidant just draws to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and that's it. So Jim does discard the Grave Troll using Conflagrate, kills the Dark Confidant. 4th land from Ted. Here is Hunt, Master of the Fells. Ted back up to 16, gets a pair of creatures. And Jim's got to be real careful with that Mana Confluence now. If he goes to 2, the Transform on Hunt, Master of the Fells will kill him.
And now it's going to take Jim a little bit of time to be able to kill the Hunt Master. He has no cards in hand.
Yeah, the important part of this, and you see Jim takes the card out of the sleeve, is actually Ravager of the Fells. So at the beginning of each upkeep, if nobody played a spell, this will turn into Ravager. When it transforms, deals 2 damage to target opponent. And to the creature, but that part we don't care about as much.
Also a 4/4 Trampler, so if Jim stays at 3, he won't be able to get through this body anyway.
Right, you have to remember that Ravager has Trample, and that is no joke. It's actually very difficult for Jim to win through.
Yes.
Ted went back up to 16 that turn.
Yeah, Jim almost has to grab life from the Loam because not casting a spell on this turn is catastrophic. Using the Mana Confluence to flashback Faithless Looting just kills him by Ted passing.
Yeah, there's some pun, and now he kind of needs another Conflagrate, but he used it last turn. I'm not sure what Jim can draw to, actually. This creature is, yeah, he doesn't have many answers to blocking it and such.
No.
It's
there's just one more Conflagrate in the deck, and he has to dredge over it and get some cards back in hand, which Life from the Loam helps him do.
Dredges, Golgari, Grave Troll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in the graveyard. None of them are Narcomoebas. Nothing here triggers those Blood Ghasts. He has to play a spell this turn.
Yep, only thing he can do is Faithless Looting. That'll put him to 2.
And then Ted will just say go.
Or he can attack. Doesn't
well, the Hunt Master doesn't have Trample. Only Ravager does.
Well, if he just double blocks on the Hunt Master with Narcomoeba, then the Wolf kills him.
He says go. Okay, Ted will flip the Hunt Master into Ravager, and that is game. So Ted Felicetti with Jund. It is very important here, especially in this kind of matchup against Dredge. How big of a coup is it that Ted won the pre-board game?
That is huge for the Jund player. And that Inquisition on Shriekhorn, that was the whole game.
All right. So we are going to go ahead and look at the sideboards. You see 4 Leyline on the board, you might think, hey, good job on Ted, except you realize that's Jim Davis's sideboard. So Dredge, he's got 4 Leylines, 3 Nature's Claim, 2 Abrupt Decays, 2 Dark Blasts, an Ancient Grudge, a Knot of the Bone, a Collective Brutality, and then the one of Vengeful Pharaoh.
I would ask Jim if he wanted to trade if I was Ted, but for Jim here, you can bring in that Abrupt Decays to slow down whatever Ted is up to. It's likely that if it's Leyline, you're probably just dead. But Abrupt Decay can deal with Grafdigger's Cage, so that's a good one to have. I wouldn't go so far as to bring an Ancient Grudge. Vengeful Pharaoh is actually pretty good here.
Yeah, Grudge, there's this issue where you can't, grudging a Grafdigger's Cage doesn't work because the cage shuts it off.
You have to actually draw it. You usually want to just bring in some number of Nature's Claims because he's going to have some kind of hate, or you should be able to win.
Yeah.
And then, the Pharaoh would be able to very easily deal with the Tarmogoyf on the previous game.
So probably go to that one. On Ted Felicetti's side, He's got 3 Fulminator Mage, 3 Kitchen Finks. Just want to start with 0 Leyline of the Void. So
Yep.
it's going to try to win without that card. 2 Grafdigger's Cage. All right, that's just a shoe-in. It's one of the 2 silver bullets for Dredge.
Yep.
But then he has other things here. A Duress. He has a Damnation. He has Knight of Souls Betrayal. There's some value there.
Yep.
Slaughter Games could work. Jund Charm could work. I don't know how many of these he wants. What are your thoughts?
So the Slaughter Games and the Jund Charm are looking like the next best options after Grafdigger's Cage, and the Knight of Souls Betrayal, probably above both of those cards, actually. I don't think you'd be playing Jund Charm if the Graveyard Hate was not something you were up to, so I expect to see that one coming in here. And then there's an argument for Duress, because hitting Cathartic Reunion actually seems pretty significant.
Yeah.
On the draw, he won't be able to get another Shriekcorn, but Reunion's a bigger find anyway.
Right.
And there's a small argument for Damnation. You can clean up on a big board, but anything where Jim has set up a board, it likely means you don't have your Graveyard Hate. If you Damnation, you're killing all of your own threats, and then Jim likely can just reset. So I'm not as big on Damnation as I am on Knight of Souls Betrayal.
So for Ted Felicetti, he's been the story here of Season 3, had an open win, has a top 8. From Sugarloaf, Pennsylvania, now has 3 top 8s and a win. He is currently doing very well in the Season 3 race. Looks like him and Brad Carpenter are both pulling away. After this weekend, he should be back in first place, looking to get his spot in the Players' Championship. A pretty interesting guy in his own right. Likes to play the good cards decks in Magic, and outside of Magic, really involved in the music scene, both as a booking agent and a performer on the Vans Warped Tour.
Yeah.
Now, we look at Season 3, there are still some action to go after this Open as we work our way toward the Season 3 Invitational. 3 more Opens, and this is what Ted has to worry about. 1 of each format. So in 2 weeks, we'll be in Baltimore for our Legacy Open. The next week, we go back to play Modern in Columbus. And then the following week, we have our Open in Knoxville. So we have those ones. They take a week off. Then there's the Season 3 Invitational in Atlanta. So 4 more tournaments for Ted. If he can keep his lead through that 4th one, he will make it to the Players' Championship. Now, for you guys also wanting to come out to these events, get some points, maybe qualify for the championship for the Atlanta Invitational weekend, all the top 8s qualify for the Invitational. And just by showing up at our tournaments, we now have our Season 3 playmats. So depending on the kind of tournament you play, that is the kind of playmat you will get. For our standard participants, that would be in Knoxville, the Dark Salvation playmat is given away. That's for the standard Open. For the Modern Open, we have Steel Overseer. That's the week before in Columbus. And the week before that, in 2 weeks, the Legacy one is Sensei's Divining Top. Now, if you can't make it out to the specific one but still want the playmat, these are also given away at the Classics. So you can get any of the playmats any of the weekends just by coming out and playing. So we hope to see you sometime this next month. We got some great events in every format coming up here in Season 3.
Yep, great events. Make it out to really cool art on these playmats. Ton of players made it out to Milwaukee this weekend. We had over 800 for the Open.
Yeah, and that's one of the higher numbers. It's why the cut to day 2 was so tough. It needed a straight 7 and 2. 71 players made it into day 2.
Yep, pretty densely populated classes this weekend. It's great to see this kind of attendance.
Of course, the 2 Classics battling on Sunday now, both with over 150 players apiece.
A lot of Magic happening. Great sight.
For Ted Felicetti, like I said, we've just gotten to know him in the last month. Just solid play skill. Look at, thinking of just like, what I like about his play style is, 1, he plays only good card decks. And 2, he's very just good at the onboard tactical lines. So it's things like, oh yeah, Kolagan's command, discard my own Liliana. Those are really powerful plays.
We saw him earlier in the tournament playing against Burn, used Liliana to Edict himself to gain 2 life of a Kitchen Finks. That's the kind of stuff that he's going to execute very well on. Yeah,
there's nothing fancy on the side. He's not trying to win on the deck registration sheet. He's just going to register the good cards and try to win on the board.
Play the good cards well.
And yeah, results will follow.
Yep. For Jim Davis and Team Metagame Gurus, there was a period where they were just dominant in Modern.
Yeah, I think the Dallas Open back during the summer.
4 out of 5 players making the top 8 in that event. The Metagame Gurus finals.
Yeah, the second one in a row where they closed out the finals. It was great.
the format's changed a bit, and they're trying to adapt. Jim, of course, picking up Dredge. I imagine this is the first tournament he's ever registered a Golgari Grave Troll.
Yeah, this is normally you'd think he'd be on a control deck. We're underway. Both players on 7 this time. Jim starts on Blood Crypt. But you're right, Jim's normally been a Jeskai Nahiri player in the format. In this matchup, I guess both of his decks are generally good against Jund. Starts on Faithless Looting. A draw of land and Conflagrate. He's going to hope to get a Dredger into the graveyard here. I think the only Dredge card he actually has is Life from the Loam, so nothing too explosive here.
Yeah. Hands with Faithless Looting in any kind of Dredger are generally keepable. It digs you so far, and just having the discard outlet is so good. So
he'll discard Bloodghast and Life from the Loam to the Faithless Looting. We now see Ted's open. He'll start with Inquisition of Kozilek. No promises as to how good this will be. You see Jim's hand of 2 lands, 2 Conflagrates, and a Faithless Looting.
And Jim's still able to do everything that he wanted to do next turn. It's likely he's just going to Dredge Life from the Loam, cast it, be fine with that. You know, he has all these Conflagrates that he wants to feed. So taking him off Faithless Looting isn't bad. Yeah,
Ted takes the Faithless Looting. It's not really taking a card from Jim, it's just slowing him down. He'll have to pay 3 instead of 1 for that.
It's a big tempo play, and unless Ted's able to produce some solid graveyard hate, tempo is very important for him.
Jim's turn, he dredges Life from the Loam, gets Cathartic Reunion and 2 lands. Jim's deck's slowing down a fair amount here. He plays a land, gets back Bloodghast, loams some more lands. 3 into his hand. His hand is now 5 lands, 2 Conflagrates. Or 4 lands, 2 Conflagrates.
Yeah, Life from the Loam's basically Ancestral Recall here.
As long as you only want them to be lands, sure.
Yeah, he just wants anything. He's got a bunch of Conflagrates.
It's pretty nice. Jim showing Ted the card. Ted asks if he could read the text on it.
And this is something where technically if your opponent wants to read one of your cards in your hand, you don't have to show them. But if you ask a judge, they're going to give you the Oracle text anyway. Just be a gentleman about it. Show them the card.
Right. You can call a judge, and a judge will give you the Oracle text on any card in the format.
Yep. Don't waste anybody's time. Just show them the card.
So Ted plays Dark Confidant on turn 2. Jim will go back to dredging. This time he hits a prize to Malcolm. Of note, Ted both his duels are black-red, so no green mana just yet for his Jund deck.
If I'm Jim, I'm pretty happy just casting Conflagrate for 1 here.
Yeah, his options are for 3 mana, he can Conflagrate for 1, or he could flashback Faithless Looting. Swings the Bloodghast. There's some want to do the looting because Jim currently has no Dredger in his graveyard.
I suppose against Jund, there's no chance that Ted just cast Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
So graveyard hate would be something like Grafdigger's Cage, so you could theoretically get back into your graveyard later.
Yeah, and Grafdigger's Cage is very good. You'd think that Ted would have already played one if he had it.
Right. Could still come off the top, though.
Right, you have to play around that.
And Dark Confidant does facilitate more draws.
So Jim thinks about it, goes Copperline Gorge, and then Conflagrate for 1 on Ted. Ted, Raging Ravine is the play for the turn. He passes. The draw was a Damnation that he has brought in.
It's not bad. It's not going to do much against what Jim is up to right now.
Yeah, Jim's draw is so slow here, though. Draws another land for the turn.
That can all change real quick with these Faithless Lootings, though.
Yeah. I just feel like how much different of a game would this have been if instead of Faithless Looting, the Dredger Jim had was a Grave Troll, for example.
Yeah.
He'll attack for 2. Ted Felicetti takes the hit. Goes down, I believe, to 14. Jim flashes back Faithless Looting. He just draws the cards. Insolent Neonate and another Faithless Looting. Just can't seem to get a Dredger, but...
Nope. Before he has to go to his main phase on the following turn, he'll be able to dredge the Loam, have 3 more cracks at finding a Stinkweed Emperor, a Grave Troll. But, you know, pressure is really on Ted to get something going. Jim can really take his time. There's no hammers that Ted's going to have here. Jim can just keep doing this for a while.
Jim will shock and play Insolent Neonate. He put that Loam back in the yard. He's hoping to dredge into a Dredger at some point here. Neonate, the card from Shadows over Innistrad. It's pretty neat in the dredge deck. You don't, if generally doesn't attack, you just play it for that discard draw ability. It's like a mini Faithless Looting.
It's a not quite a color-shifted version of Hapless Researcher, but it does harken back to the card.
4th land for Ted, and he passes. Jim's turn. He will dredge life from the loam. 1, 2 lands, and another life from the loam. This is the slow version of dredge, where you dredge, but you just do it a little bit at a time.
He does still have the other Faithless Looting to flashback. This could be a lot worse if he just didn't find another dredger. You know, this is better than that.
A swing for 3 from Jim. I mean, at some point, he can just loam back a million cards and conflagrate Ted down, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can... If he gets to 6 mana, he can conflagrate for what, 11?
Yeah. Okay, post-combat, looks like Jim's going to sacrifice into base. He's looking at using Neonate to dredge some more cards.
You can, yeah, 12, I guess, is the maximum you can conflagrate for. Ted's at 13, getting pretty close.
Jim's going to cast the loam from his hand, get 3 more lands back. Look at his hand. He's got 7 cards now.
He's got multiple conflagrates too, so he can just point one upstairs this turn and get him next turn.
Now plays a Faithless Looting from hand. Okay, that makes sense. He did that so that he had 2 dredgers in the graveyard for sure. So he dredges the first life from the loam. 1, 2, 3, Cathartic Reunion, and 2 more lands.
Not good.
Oh my gosh. Well, does it again. Nature's Claim, Amalgam, Grave Troll. Okay.
Right on time.
Discards 2. It's the slow dredge.
This is fine because Ted hasn't done anything.
I mean, right, that's but all it takes, what if like Ted just has Jund Charm here and just like, yeah, sweep up your yard. It's like, what a jerk move.
Attack you for 3, I guess.
Jim could lose from there.
It's possible. I think that the odds are pretty low, even with that.
Yeah, just, you know, you're right. Ted's deck's really light on interaction, so even a slow dredge might be good enough.
Yeah, this is a matchup where you see that Damnation here, but what Ted wishes that he had was a bunch of Tarmogoyfs.
Yeah. All right, so now Insult Neonate's going to be used. Discarding Mana Confluence, dredging Grave Troll. Here's 6 more. Confluence, Cathartic Reunion, Stinkweed Imp, Neonate, Nature's Claim, Shriekhorn. Jim's just not getting anything. Where are the Narcomoebas? Where are the Bloodghasts?
Must have bordered them out.
That's not true. Plays a land, returns no Bloodghasts, casts life from the loam, getting back 3 more lands.
This is what this is aggro loam.
There's just no creatures. He's just not triggered. He's milled, I don't know, 25 cards.
Bloodghast, life from the loam. It's aggro loam.
Yeah, I think he's milled all 4 Cathartic Reunions.
I expect on the following turn he'll cast Seismic Assault.
All 20 of his lands.
Everything will make sense.
Ted's turn, I mean, Ted's deck's not helping him. His turn was attack with Raging Ravine, go. Okay. Jim can beat that if that's the clock he's against.
I think Ted should be dead this turn through Conflagrate, right? If Jim just loams.
Stinkweed Imp was the dredge. Now Jim hits 2 Narcomoebas, so he did not board him out. I know. 2 prized amalgams. Now, an interesting question I am going to ask, though, and we can talk about this during sideboarding if Jim gets this, is whether or not the Bloodghasts were boarded out.
Well, there's one on the table, right?
Oh. These dredgers are just horrible, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, Jim's looking at his hand, you know, swings Ted down to 10 with Bloodghast. Can he loam up to a lethal Conflagrate here?
Yeah, with double loam, he can make a land drop. Looks like he has a Stomping Ground. It can enter untapped. He goes 8 cards to 10 cards to 12 cards.
Or Plague, Holgari, Grave Troll. It's the 5/5 for 5. What a card. And it might just be good enough. It's going to force... Yeah, Jim gets back all these things.
Aggro loam indeed.
Ghost Quarter, Damnation from Ted, leaving up Lightning Bolt. Everything dies. Tarmogoyf is the follow-up. This is the weirdest game of dredge.
See, I think I'm almost positive.
Ted might win. Ted could win this game.
Well, Jim still has access to loam Conflagrate for lethal. He just has to piece that together. Ted's tapped out. There's no zero mana spell.
I don't know if there's
he
enough
be
lands for that.
That could be the limiting
Look at his graveyard.
Here.
He doesn't have enough lands to make that play.
Okay.
If he had 6 more lands in his graveyard and he's close, you're right. He would draw to 8, then he would have to play a land, go down to 7, would loam up to 9, would loam up to 11, and it'd be there, right?
He has 5 lands in his graveyard currently, and there's a 6th.
So he's going to dredge loam for the turn. Yeah, you might be right. I think he can do it. So we'll go through it as Jim does it. He loams 3 more cards. Taps 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-point Conflagrate. Jim Davis forces a 3rd game. Just how he drew it up. We're gonna.
This is just good, clean magic.
It just is aggro loam. If Jim's going to want to play that way, he really just should have brought in Seismic Assault. He would need far fewer cards.
Cast some Countryside Crushers.
Right. Aggro, to be fair, Loam has, Aggro Loam has a good Jund matchup, I bet.
A little Flame Jab, your Dark Confidant.
Basically, yeah, that's what he's up to.
Ravens Crime Away, your Damnation.
I'm less into this the more cards you name. We're going to go over back to the sideboard.
Worm Harvest.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So it's looking like what Jim employed is he kind of trimmed on some of his finds here, and possibly on Cathartic Reunion as well. Because we did see some number of basically every element of the deck.
Yeah, Cathartic Reunions, he milled over most of them. I think they're still here.
Possible that he trimmed on things like Bloodghast, maybe even... I don't think you're ever supposed to trim on a Dredger, but it's possible that some of the imps are in the sideboard. You know,
what I got out of that game was that Ted Felicetti's draw he's very light on interaction. So what he kept a hand of Inquisition into Dark Confidant. That was... Because when you have 2 lands and those cards in Jund, you generally just never mulligan. But it leads to some pretty embarrassing games against Dredge. That one, Jim did nothing, and Ted just never capitalized.
And Dredge just is not playing the kind of ABC magic that you need for that kind of hand. You know, a Damnation, it can get some players. If you're playing Zoo, you might be able to line that up. But even with Jim just taking all the time in the world, just couldn't ever leverage that kind of card.
So is the most important card in Ted's deck here, and I mean this honestly, is it Tarmogoyf?
I think so. That kind of game, the cage would have been great, obviously, but Tarmogoyf is what he needed. He needed a clock.
What I wonder is at that point whether or not we're going to see some kitchen finks out of Ted this next game. I mean, it's a 3-2 for 3, right?
On the play, it's certainly better. Get it on the table, another threat. 3 mana, gain some life. If Jim is going that slowly, that's certainly significant. If all he's up to is just the 1 Bloodghast and attacking you with Insolent Neonate, yeah, Kitchen Fink seems great in that kind of game.
So Ted Felicetti now in the 2016 leaderboard at 32nd, has a buy at our events. This whole Season 3 run for Ted started at the Season 2 Invitational. Had a great tournament there. That Invitational, though, ended up being won by Liam Lonergan. He got his namesake on a likeness on a token. See, the Liam Lonergan Elf Warrior token. It was the tournament he won with Elves and Modern, a perfect 8-0 in the Swiss, and a perfect sweep through the top 8. And now he's on token and in the Players' Championship. We are now giving these away for all Open participants and all Sunday Classic participants. So show up to one of our weekends and collect some of these. Also, if you can't make it out, they are shipping with orders from StarCityGames.com of at least $5, and we'll be doing that all the way through the Season 3 Invitational in December. So you're going to need to do this a couple times because you're going to need a lot of elves.
Yep. I've made a couple orders. I've been picking up some foils for my Popper Cube, getting very close to having it foiled out.
So the trick is you just place a $5 order and then another and then...
Yeah, you got to maximize your tokens.
That's...
Don't do that.
I mean, see, I'm really lonely and I like getting mail, so I every day put a $5. And I'm like, oh look, someone sent me something again. It's
hope to catch the mailman.
Yeah.
See how he's doing.
Players for game 3 here. Ted's gonna be back on the play. I mean, his Inquisition into Dark Confidant hand. Does that hand even... How good is that hand against Dredge? Like, I was going to say, but man, it sure sucks that Jim had 2 Conflagrates. I'm thinking, is that hand good against anything? I mean, it's kind of the Jund game plan. I'm not saying we're supposed to ship it.
It was a 7-card hand, right?
Yeah. I mean, you just can't ship Inquisition Dark Confidant, right?
On the play, that hand is on the low side of a keep. On the draw, it's on the high side of a mulligan.
Well, he kept it on the draw. I understand that it's... Like, if we're mulliganing that, what are we saying about this matchup? That is the Jund playbook.
It's a bad matchup. I'm pretty convinced of that. You can afford to go to 6. He doesn't have a ton of graveyard hate, right? It's just the 2 cages, but you can afford to go to 6 looking for that.
Well, he's going to go to 6 this game. That one was without a second thought. Remember, that was against a dredge deck that was fighting as hard as it could against its pilot.
That looked like a poorly drafted self-mill deck from like Innistrad 1. It just was not up to much of anything. Just 2-1 for 2 coming in there with the Bloodghast. Insolent Neonate adding to that pressure.
So Jim resolved his mulligan because Jim's on 6 cards. Ted is currently going to 5. Now, by the book, Jim did that out of order, but that's fine.
Yeah, not a huge issue.
Ted keeping on 5, scries to the bottom. Yeah, okay, so that's why Jim says, okay, now I actually will do it in order.
You know, abstractly, the dredge deck can afford to mulligan more, but if Ted finds a Grafdigger's Cage, then he makes up a lot of equity.
All right, so here's what Ted's got going on. Got a Dark Confidant, he has a Tarmogoyf and a Jund Charm in his hand. And at that point, on 5, I'm already keeping. I don't care what the other cards are.
Hope that Jim's draw is as slow as game 1, so you can actually leverage that Jund Charm and the Tarmogoyf. Should be able to clock pretty effectively.
Tarmogoyf, we think, might be the best card in the matchup. Jund Charm, some graveyard hate. Game on. Jim Davis, though, starts on Bloodstained Mire into Blood Crypt. He was on a 6-card hand, though, to be fair, when Dredge does what Dredge does, it doesn't even feel like that matters.
He has Neonate Grave Troll already, so this is looking a lot better than his game 2 hand.
No second land, though, for Jim. He's got to be careful in that. Actually, correct that. He's got Copperland Gorge. His hand's just pretty good.
Yeah.
Ted drew land 2. It was Stomping Ground, so he'll go to 18 for the Stomping Ground, and he's going to use his fetch land to go to 17, maybe lower. Now we'll make it 15. I think we're going to see a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, I like just making sure you get your colors in line. You want to make sure whatever third land you draw, you're able to cast the Jund Charm.
Not Tarmogoyf. How about Scavenging Ooze? That seems much better.
Yeah, that's quite a bit better.
And maybe, I think that's got to be why we see the fetch land there to get double green.
Yeah, definitely.
Jim mills 6 off Grave Troll, hits 2 prized amalgams, but nothing that can trigger them. Nothing yet. Goes to upkeep. Is he going to dredge Dackmore Salvage, or is he going to draw? Deciding right now, he's going to be dredging Salvage. And dredges a Loam and a land, so puts another dredger in the graveyard. It's a good turn.
Really would have liked to have seen a Narcomoeba there, but can't have everything.
Cathartic Reunion from Jim on turn 2. This could be off to the races.
Yeah, or milling over Conflagrate to kill a Scavenging Ooze would have been big. Now Jim is potentially in trouble against this Jund Charm.
Yeah, the Scavenging Ooze doesn't matter anymore. There's too many cards. So discard 2, draw 3. The first draw will be dredging Golgari Grave Troll. We see a Narcomoeba and a Stinkweed Imp. So
looks like this reunion is going to get these amalgams back before the Jund Charm could be an issue.
The second draw, another prized amalgam and a Bloodghast. So because all these draws happen at once, this Narcomoeba trigger is still on the stack, and even though he hit the amalgam after the Narcomoeba, it will still see it, so all 3 of the amalgams will enter the battlefield. So it dredged all those things. 3 amalgam triggers.
Now Ted's either looking at chaining enough mana to removal spell and Scavenging Ooze away all these amalgams individually, or building up into Grafdigger's Cage plus Damnation.
Ted draws Inquisition of Kozilek. I think he's going to miss the 3rd land drop for Jund Charm here.
The texture of the game has changed enough where he needs to focus on the board now.
Well, he can eat 2 Bloodghasts with that mana. He'll have a 4/4. A 4/4 is good against amalgams. He's still taking 7 and might lose to a Conflagrate. I mean, he's got Terminate, Inquisition, Jund Charm, and Tarmogoyf as his cards.
Yeah, Conflagrate's already face up in the graveyard there. You might just have to eat that on this turn, though he's already at a precarious 15.
If he's going to eat Stinkweed Imp, if he eats Conflagrate, the issue is then Ooze doesn't even... Then he needs to be big enough.
Yep.
I guess, he gets rid of the Dredger, and he gets rid of the Conflagrate. Attacks, all right, with Scavenging Ooze, puts Jim to 14.
He's not going to block.
Okay, if that's the line, how does he win, though?
He's in trouble against these Bloodghasts, that's for sure.
He's taking 10?
He doesn't want to Jund Charm to Pyroclasm because that doesn't kill the amalgams.
Go back to Jim. It's turn 3 on his side. He could dredge life from the loam or draw. As is frequently the case, Jim will dredge.
Yep. Already has Dackmore Salvage if he needs to make a land drop this turn. Just dredging is good.
3 cards into the graveyard. Faithless Looting, Mana Confluence, Narcomoeba. That one's a hit. It'll enter the battlefield. There are still a pair of Bloodghasts.
Hold on, does Jim have 6 cards in there? Oh, so he no longer has Conflict in graveyard. He has 1 in hand, though. So he needs an untapped land to be able to. He would be out of. He wouldn't have enough cards to make that lethal this turn.
10. Draws life from the loam. Well, no. Okay, I think he could have killed him. So if Jim had Conflagrate, if he has an untapped red, he can Conflagrate for 0. He can discard his hand to flash it back. No, unless if he has 6 cards, he could, because then the Bloodghast would haste.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is still a great turn.
You would have to make your land drop before you did that, though. So you couldn't give them haste this turn. I don't think he had a kill.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Draw for Ted is Damnation.
Not enough mana for
Not
that
enough
one.
mana. He's down to 6 on the attack. Terminate. Scavenging Ooze mana. Yeah, Jund Charm. He shows it. It's not going to be good enough. So, a good run for Ted Felicetti, but this is the end of the road. In 3 games, he loses to Jim Davis and drops to 10-4. But for team captain Jim Davis, his 11th win puts him at 11-3. He is now knocking on the door for another modern top 8 for Metagame Gurus.
Yeah, and for Jim, this is far from his style of deck.